Well, the gaming industry was going bonkers about VR in general and Oculus in particular. People like me were just looking at the price tags of their headsets, decently powerful computers, delivery of all that stuff, and sighing, sadly. But then I heard one of the developers of Diablo Immortal saying, "Don't you guys have phones?"
Do you guys not have phones?
And unlike with Blizzard's failure here, mobile technology could actually be at least a temporary alternative. So today we indulge in nostalgia for the mid-2010s virtual reality, which was actually available to the average consumer. You might want to charge your phones, because we're about to begin. Sometime in late 2013, two employees of Google's branch in Paris, David Coz and Damien Henry, had a brilliant idea. Wouldn't it be cool to make a VR headset based on a smartphone? Why, the gyroscope and accelerometer are already in place, the rest of the electronics too, even the screen can be adapted. The plan was to make a stereoscope with lenses and leave everything else to the conscience of the phone's hardware and software. No one allocated that much resources to the project, so the employees devoted just 20% of their free time to the future goggles. It's unclear if this had influenced the choice of material, but the Google Cardboard headset was eventually unveiled at Google I/O 2014. It was essentially just a piece of cardboard with optical lenses, a magnet, and clasps, with assembly no more complicated than folding a FedEx box. However, if you're an absolutely hopeless Edward Watermelon hands, there was even an option to buy an assembled version. Then you only had to put your phone into the contraption and voila! With a slight movement of the hand, the piece of cardboard turned into a VR headset. The magnet could even replace the control buttons to some extent, as on regular headsets. The price tag of this pinnacle of futuristic technology was $5 tops, but in most cases it was simply handed out at various conferences and presentations. As a tiny flash forward, it should be said that analogs from various manufacturers began to appear right after that. At first they seemed to be a bit of a bootleg, but it turned out that Google themselves was encouraging third-party developers to make compatible goggles. Plus, they also released an SDK for app development, but more on that later. As an example of such cardboard creations, there were the 2016 goggles from a company called Homido. The assembly of their product was highly optimized due to cutouts, velcros, already mounted lenses. All in all, the same product, only a bit more polished. And while we're at it, I can't help but show you the Homido Mini. It's basically a VR pince-nez. The method of use was as simple as it gets. Attach the thing to your phone, put it on your nose, and voila! Virtual reality. I can't say this is in any way comfortable, however, but the ability to take your phone out of one pocket and this thing out of the other, combine them, and get some sort of VR is quite impressive. On the average, all mobile VR headsets functioned in a similar way. Here's a case, just put your phone in, that's it. But there were companies that have gone further with this concept. Don't worry, we'll get to games soon enough, but first a little bit of history. Bear with me. So one of the first and well-known examples of the development of the cardboard idea came at the end of 2014, literally the same year. Samsung created their own version of a mobile helmet and named it Samsung Gear VR. The company had plans for the project since the early 2000s. The only thing missing was the understanding of what kind of stuffing is needed for a virtual reality headset. So Samsung turned to the young Oculus VR around the time of its acquisition by Facebook. Yep, here we have the continuation of the Oculus's story as well. The result of the collaboration was raw at first. The headset was overheating all the time, the lenses got steamy, etc. But the second version of the Gear VR released in 2015 was already a great option for the fans of portability. Unlike the cardboard, this VR headset had its own electronics. The phone was connected to it via a built-in micro-USB connector, thanks to which the headset could both assist the phone in determining the position of the user's head and be controlled by the touchpad. In short, the thing was awesome. I can speak both for myself and for the 5 million copies sold. Well, maybe not exactly sold, because Gear VR was often given away as a bundle with Samsung phones, but that's not the point. Here we could dive into a long and tedious listing of the most significant mobile headsets, but we won't. Firstly, because you'll die of boredom, and secondly, because there weren't really any significant models. The Xiaomi got a zipper for your phone, the Google got a remote to control your headset, and so on. I'll be honest, no revolution has happened in mobile VR to this day. You can take the same Samsung Gear VR, put the modern Homeito Prime 2021 next to it, and you'll see that the latter may only be more convenient to use, which is also debatable. The only tangible differences were in terms of compatibility with specific phones and the presence of apps. The statistics on the use of even the extremely popular second version of Gear VR confirmed that the whole idea wasn't very promising. Users would only use the device for about 25 minutes at a time. And it would seem, has the transition of, well, anything from computers to phones ever ended badly? There were two major problems. The first one was suddenly the phone that was the key to making the headset. In addition to VR, Android and iOS are running a whole bunch of other processes to take up memory and heat up the phone. This made it impossible to, say, attach cameras or controllers to the headset. The second reason, however, was audience perception. Not only does the phone heat up and the battery dies in no time, but mobile games are really designed to be played for hours on end. As a result, the interest of the audience was on a steady decline, Oculus VR continued to make serious stuff, and mobile virtual reality remained a pleasure for a very specific circle of people. And unfortunately, I haven't seen any progress in the development of this sector of the industry, despite the significant technical progress in mobile technologies. Nevertheless, phones too have some stuff worth looking at, which is what I suggest we move on to. For the sake of decency, we should start with 360-degree videos. Yes, I get that you can watch them in absolutely any headset, not to mention that they kind of work on ordinary monitors as well, but first, I highly doubt that anyone would buy an expensive Oculus just for the opportunity to watch virtual roller coasters. But buying a case with the lenses, inserting your phone into it and chilling on the couch, now that's a plan. Thus, for example, you can enjoy the awesome music video for Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. And secondly, the concept has gone a little further on mobile phones, which is what I'm leading to. Here, for example, is Google's Spotlight Stories app. It's a movie theater app that shows short stories created specifically for viewing in VR. They have nice graphics and simple yet fun plots. In the launch version of the app, I got Buggy Night, a story about cute bugs and a very hungry frog. There was no deep artistic value there, but as a funny 3-minute cartoon, I found the story more than satisfying. Besides, while you're busy watching the main action, there may be something going on around you as well, which means you can replay the story and look in a different direction. Spotlight's arsenal includes a documentary about I Love Dogs, an interactive story about a pig and a cake, and for dessert, nothing less than an official Simpsons cartoon. We must mention Pearl, a road movie about a girl's journey with her father that was nominated for an Oscar. To reiterate, Spotlight is available on Steam and even on YouTube, but the Android version is both accessible and adapted for the device. Wakey wakey! I know that mobile VR is more about chill than action. And if you haven't fallen asleep just yet, then good for you, you've just beat our editor-in-chief. There are really tons of mobile apps that have the same Simply Watch functionality. Of noteworthy stuff, there's BBC Earth Life in VR, where you can enjoy scuba diving among marine wildlife. The virtual animals didn't have that many polygons, but who cares when you can swim next to a squid or whale? All the deep-sea creatures also didn't suffer from weak graphics and were just as creepy as in real life. And the most important thing is that you have infinite oxygen. If that's not a technological miracle, I don't know what is. I also came across a pretty fun app called Virtual Speech VR. It is a public speaking simulator. The user can rehearse whatever speech or presentation he'll need to deliver tomorrow morning, while the virtual audience listens as enthusiastically as the real one could never do. Not only that, the simulator also tells about the speaker's manner of speech, timbre of voice, and eye contact. Where else can you present your report for the month with such passion so that at the end you'd see 100 points, you rock? Alright, let's get to the games. The Gear VR was lucky because due to cooperation with Oculus, it had some exclusives. For example, there was a cool and relaxing game called World Traveler VR. It tossed the player into some location, for example from a movie or just somewhere on Earth, and the player had to look around and guess where he was. only there weren't that very many levels and the locations weren't that diverse, because the app got no further development. But again, 25 minutes, do some sightseeing, then take off the headset so that your phone doesn't overheat. The same Samsung headset could also boast an exclusive called The Wizard's Trials of Meliora. Now, that was closer to what one would want from virtual reality. First-person view and the ability to wreak havoc by firing spells that could and should be used to roast the local hostile fauna. The player was placed in a preset position, while ogres and goblins of all shapes and sizes ran on the roads near him. For successfully dealing with enemies, the player was allowed to upgrade his offensive and defensive spells. Yeah, the enemies were also fighting back. From a far distance, it's almost like a mobile Skyrim VR. Once again, I'll add that I played another variation of this game on a full-fledged VR headset in a virtual reality club and paid real money for it. And here we have literally the same thing, only brought to you solely by mobile technologies. And now, attention! It's time for large-scale VR projects for mobiles. I'm going to start with my trump card in the form of the first Quake. Yes, in VR. Yes, on a phone. Of course, you need to trifle with installations first, because the port only contains the engine, but then… yes, and a Bluetooth joystick is absolutely necessary, otherwise it's just unplayable trash. But all this preparation can reward you with quite a fun experience. The game itself hasn't changed a bit. You see familiar locations, even remember the positions of enemies, but because of the new way of playing, every shot from around the corner hits you like the first time. Has anyone ever dreamt of the gadget from Men in Black to erase your memory and play the game again? Well, there you have it. But okay, talking about the ports is cheating, which is why I present you Gravity Pool. It's a puzzle game which looks like Portal. The beginning was just as innocent. You take a cube, put it on the button and go on. But this is just the first puzzle. Then you had to activate switches in a limited time, fight with space. All in all, thank God there were no portals. Time to beat heavily depends on how cunning the player is, but I think the first time the game will be a tough nut to crack. While racking your brains, you can also admire the surrounding cyberspace, which looks minimalistic, but there's something in it. Meanwhile, I can hear disgruntled hissing coming from iPhone users, and fair enough, because nothing prevented me from combining an iPhone with the same cardboard and launching, say, Fractal Combat X. That's an airplane simulator, which to me was much like the sound-alike series Ace Combat. Same arcade-like controls and environments, similar level of thrill, and VR support, of course. The story was also there, but it was just to check the box. We started on a station, tasked to clear the planets to take back the mineral fields, blah blah blah, who cares, just get in the plane. In terms of gameplay, however, the game is quite enticing. It also had the ability to turn with a motion control, so you could stretch your hands out in front of you and twirl around, saying whoosh, and it worked perfectly. As for the downsides, I could rant about the potato textures, but given the choice between that and a melted phone case, I'd settle for the potatoes. Apple users could also enjoy Relax River VR, an awesome-looking app that is now more relevant than ever. The title described the game quite plainly, just as I like. The user would sit in a boat floating down a river and enjoy the views. My god, it was beautiful. There was no gameplay or options whatsoever, but screw them. It's definitely something a lot of us need these hard days. And the ability to float down the river while sitting on the couch sure is something. 10 out of 10 would float again. Just as I was about to let you go and relax to River Nirvana, I suddenly stumbled upon a game called Incel VR. What? Oh shoot, I mean Incel VR, inside the cell, that's where the action of the game takes place. It's some kind of racing or action where the player fights all sorts of bacteria and microbes while studying the structure of the organism. It may seem to be just a roller coaster with a little control of the track, while the gameplay is also reminiscent of several games at once, but the visuals and dynamics make you completely forget about it and enjoy the ride. And really, that's how you could describe much of this industry. Mobile VR couldn't and still can't boast having Half-Life Alyx or at least Beat Saber. And due to technical limitations, I'm afraid we won't be seeing something like that in the nearest future. But given the technical requirement, namely just a mobile phone which we all use on an everyday basis and extremely cheap goggles, there's definitely something to try out here. It's also worth noting that most of the mentioned and unmentioned games are available both on Android and iOS, on Steam, and in the Oculus Store. And if you're a lucky owner of a full-fledged VR headset, there's certainly not much point in limiting yourself to just cardboard. And if you're not, then welcome to the world of blurry and fascinating virtual worlds. And if suddenly there will be a noticeable progress in mobile VR, I would come back to the topic ASAP. But for now, that's all, folks. Well, except for your likes and comments, of course. Feel free to share with us your experience of using phones in virtual reality. In the next video, Oculus will have to wait a bit, because there's one more topic to go through within the given time period. And I'm talking about augmented reality. I hope I've intrigued you enough. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. See you soon!